Question for Greg from Demetrius B. The question is, after seeing the other Eric, that is Eric Helms, doing some pull-ups, I thought to myself, he doesn't get his chin over the bar. So the question is, from a strength or hypertrophy standpoint, is it important when doing pull-ups to get the chin over the bar?
Yeah, so Demetrius, you just about got yourself in some hot water mentioning the other Eric in the hallowed halls of the Stronger by Science podcast. You almost got a warning. We don't like to speak of him around here. However, you redeemed yourself by calling out his just utter bullshit, cheater ass, fake pull-ups. But no, so actual serious answer to the question. I think it is fine to not necessarily do a full range of motion on pull-ups, specifically not getting your chin all the way over the bar, or especially not getting your chest to bar, which some people are sticklers about. The reason why I would say that is pull-ups have a really weird strength curve. So when you think about an exercise like, say, bench press is generally hardest near the middle to bottom of the range of motion. And once you can get the bar past that, you can lock out pretty easily. Some people fail at lockout, but that's a pretty uncommon thing. And if you fail at lockout, I think more often than not, it's an issue with scapular positioning more so than just like sheer strength. But that's another discussion for another day. But anyway, and that's how most of the lifts we do are. Somewhere between the beginning of the lift and the lockout of the lift, there is a hard section, or somewhere between the start of the lift and the middle of the lift, I mean. There's a hard section. Once you get past that, you're good to go. That applies to bench, it applies to squat, it applies to overhead press, even applies to something like skull crushers. So that is the general strength curve you're dealing with. And so if you cheat range of motion in exercises like that by not going down all the way, you're missing out, A, on the most challenging part of the lift, and B, the most challenging part of the lift tends to occur when the muscles are in a reasonably stretched position. And that's important because there's some evidence that A, longer ranges of motion are good for hypertrophy, but B, that is important mostly because putting muscles under load in a stretched position seems to maybe cause more hypertrophy than just muscle tension itself. So, for example, doing full reps versus just flexing your muscles really, really hard. If you're completely untrained, just flexing may help you build a little muscle, but it's not going to do much for you if you have any meaningful degree of training experience. However, by just flexing, you can put a ton of tension on the muscles, but it's probably not going to be near maximal tension in a stretch position. So, most lifts are limited by what you can lift through the shortest or through a particular range of motion, but that particular range of motion is near that very important stretch position. In the pull-up, on the other hand, it's very much the opposite. So the hardest part of the lift for the vast majority of people doesn't occur when your muscles are in or near a stretch position, but rather when they're in or near a fully contracted or almost fully contracted position. And the thing is, that just doesn't seem to be quite as important mechanistically for hypertrophy. So I don't think it's that crucial that you necessarily go full range of motion on pull-ups, meaning getting your chin way over the bar every time. I do think it's important to go down all the way because that's putting you in that stretch position for your lats, but I don't necessarily think it's important to go all the way up. And in fact, it is theoretically maybe counterproductive just because you tend to be so much weaker there at the very top of the lift that if you're stopping a set when you can no longer get all the way up on a pull-up, you probably haven't really challenged the rest of the range of motion all that much yet. It's still really easy at the bottom in the stretch position. It's still really easy through the mid-range, which is probably where you're maybe creating the most muscular tension. It's just really hard at the top. And so if you stop when that is limiting you, you may be stopping the set before you're actually fully challenging yourself through the more productive parts of that range of motion. So I think you could do one of two things with that. Either you could stick with like a standardized range of motion that maybe isn't chin over bar, or maybe like chin right at bar, but not like chest to bar, certainly. So more of like a moderate range of motion, and then stop when that range of motion starts failing you. So, maybe you pull up until your nose is level with the bar. When you can no longer get your nose level with the bar, you call the set there. That's probably going to be a range of motion where like you're not going to be quite as limited in the very, very top part of the lift as you would be if you were going chin over bar every time. Something else you could do, which I think would probably be the best option of any of them, is to do pull-ups where you start with a load where for the first few reps of the set, you can go through a full range of motion. So, chin over bar, maybe even substantially over the bar. And if you're doing weighted pull-ups, start each set or do each set with a weight where for the first maybe 3 to 5 reps, you can go chin over bar, full range of motion, and then just be fine with letting your range of motion get smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually you reach a point where it probably isn't productive anymore. So, if you can't even get your forehead to bar height, you're probably fatigued enough at that point that really you're not accomplishing that much anymore. But, I don't think you need to have the same range of motion for all of your reps. Go until the weakest part of the range of motion fatigues and you can't get chin over bar anymore. Then keep going until like a slightly stronger part of the range of motion fatigues and you can't get really any of your face over the bar anymore. And then just call the set there. I think that's probably going to get you the best of both worlds. If you do get anything particularly beneficial from kind of getting to that squeezed, fully contracted position, you're still getting a few reps per set where you are going all the way up, but you're not letting that limit how hard you can stimulate your muscles through the rest of the range of motion. So that's what I would probably recommend. But just in general, to answer your question about Helms's pull-ups, as long as he's not going through like a third of the range of motion, like, if he's going eyes to bar, like nose to bar or something like that, that's probably perfectly fine.
And I got a lot of flack for saying that people pushing marijuana are bad people, but they aren't as bad as Helms. Helms is a bad guy. He's going to cheat his range of motion, and he's just not trustworthy, whether it's with his range of motion or other things.
Could not agree more. All right. Question